conference on the future of Europe has already been mentioned. So the word is, or the floor is now Carlotta's. Maybe shall I do the presentation?
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to basically, first of all, to give an overview about what the conference on the future of Europe was, and understand the work that we have done linked to it, and what are the basically the issues regarding the role of civil society, and what are the issues at stake for the future linked to the outcomes of the conference. So you see here you have some links also that maybe you can see later. But basically this process, which lasted a year, was focused pretty much about the contributions of citizens, which through citizens panels at European level, which were members were selected randomly in different member states. There were also 6 national panels which followed the same rules as the European ones, but only in 6 countries who accepted to do this process. So Hungary was not one of those countries, for instance, it was only 6. And then there was a digital platform where everybody could contribute with ideas or events. And attached to it, there was it was steered by the 3 institutions through an executive board, and the plenary was organized with regular meetings in Strasbourg and with working groups which actually worked afterwards on the conclusions of the citizens panels. So basically, what we try to do as Civil Society Europe, we realized from the onset the problem that actually civil society was not really meant to be part of this process. So basically, we created a space gathering as many organizations as possible, organized at European level, to basically also demonstrate the value of our work, also in terms of the follow-up of holding institutions accountable, and also to produce the views of civil society on the future of Europe, because we were not asked what was our opinion about these things. And so we did that through a process and produced recommendations which we used also in the plenary of the conference. So basically, how civil society organizations were connected to the conference. At the beginning, it was really difficult because the institutions, I think, didn't really have an agreement among themselves about the vision of how to organize this conference. It was also difficult within the COVID, because at the beginning a lot of things happened online. And also in the ideas of the institutions, I mean, the parliament was more supportive of having civil society there, but less the member states, and especially, you know, it was France who had this idea of a conference mainly focused on citizens. And also the European Commission, in their ideas, we only had mainly a promotion task to organize events, to disseminate information, to involve citizens, to participate in the platform. In the end, we managed to have, before the start of the conference, to be part of the plenary, but not the executive board, where the social partners were, for instance. And one success, which I think is important for the future, was that because we created this convention, we sort of claimed that we would nominate the members of the civil society component, and not them would decide which organizations would be sitting there. The only thing, this was not completely successful, because we had to, in the end, out of the 8 seats that we had to leave 3 seats to another organizations, mainly focusing on sort of a hybrid organization, the European movement, which includes, of course, citizens, civil society, but also political parties and so on. And it was not always easy to, to work with them. In any case, well, the next slide. Another challenge that we had is that we had to self-fund our participation, contrary to basically all other members of the plenary, which was very difficult for many organizations, especially in the end of the process where we had, like in a month, 2 meetings in Strasbourg, for instance, so with high costs. We couldn't be really involved in the citizens' panels. At the beginning, we were promised the possibility to have be associated as experts. This didn't really work that much, and on the contrary, we had some issues where the experts were selected were actually more biased than us. And this had some impact, I think, in also the conclusions of the citizens' panels. We also had difficulties to interact with the citizens because of the way their time was organized, but also because there was a feeling that citizens had to, be sort of work by themselves, and that led also to some confusion about our role, especially with the citizens who were not involved with civil society organizations. And also we had difficulties to cover all the working groups because we were less, and the way it was organized, it was quite rigid in many working groups, so we couldn't necessarily contribute if we were not members. Next slide. In terms of positive outcomes, we've actually built a good cooperation with the trade unions, which didn't exist before, and we found some imaginative ways to organize, for example, meetings during the lunch breaks together with them to present our views on the process, and which attracted also citizens and decision makers. Because we finished our internal process before the last phase of the conference, we could also influence the discussion in the working groups and include some of our work. And also what is positive in the end of the process, contrary to what was expected, finally the final recommendations that come out of the report of the conference do respect the work which was achieved by the plenary, which was pretty much based on the citizens' recommendations. So that is quite positive. And also we have a number of recommendations which refer also to civil society, which is the next slide. And this was not granted because, of course, citizens started from their own perspective. So some of these conclusion referring to civil society, they refer to civil dialogue. So, for instance, and they associate civil society organization to the new mechanism for citizens' participation, the fact that decision makers have to reinforce cooperation with civil society, there must be structures support to civil society organizations, including funding. The EU functioning and decision-making process has to be improved with better associating civil society. Next slide. And what is also positive concretely is a suggestion to have a separate pillar in the EU Democracy Action Plan on civil society and also social partners. So we're looking forward for a follow-up of that, because currently that process is very weak on this. Also, the proposal for a strategy on civil society got through in the conclusions. That's great. European Association Statute as well. And also, there is also the fact that institutions have to support further civil society organizations that promote the rule of law on the ground. Finally, I would like to say some things about the issues at stake on this process. So basically, to tell you that it is considered as a groundbreaking exercise to involve so much citizens on the discussion on these issues that affect the European Union and its future. But we must say that this process happened without having any process really involving civil society on that. So we still haven't had really a moment to discuss at the same level with EU institutions issues that concerns the future of Europe and its reform with civil society. So this is felt also a little bit as a threat in a way. So we know that they want to institute a permanent citizens' assembly in the future, which is positive in itself, but we are wondering, will it replace possible structured civil dialogue with civil society? And finally, also to say that we also have a conclusion which might be a little bit worrying because an advisory body, the European Economic and Social Committee, there is a sentence in the conclusion saying that they will facilitate participatory democracy, including structured civil dialogue with civil society. So these are the things to reflect. And in the last part of last slide, you will see that the follow-up of the process is foreseen in the autumn with a few things happening. So we have to keep looking at these issues in the future. Thank you.
One thing to connect what I was saying to this process. Because what we see is that sometimes at the European level, but also at the national level, there is this tentative to oppose direct participatory mechanisms, like citizens' assembly, with structured dialogue, which are actually complementary. And we saw during this conference how frustrating it is for citizens to participate in this kind of endeavors where actually their recommendations were captured by the institutions to put forward what their political agendas were. So it was really important also for civil society to be there to watch on these kind of dynamics and put pressure on the institutions to respect the recommendations of the citizens and work together towards a final output. So it's really important that we also civil society working more on structured dialogue or on more participatory democratic tools, that we talk together and we present these different mechanisms as complementary and not as opposed.
Thank you very much.